Welcome back to another episode of All the Glitters. I'm your host, Kalen Hurley. Let's start the show. So, the free agency frenzy, the bonanza that is free agency is over. We're going to get deals and trades happening. um, Contracts are going to be signed in the upcoming days, but the big fish are where they're going to be at. I think we're going to see a bigger, heavier trade summer than usual. Not a lot of teams' needs were met. I think a lot of teams were very cautious. Contracts were pretty volatile. You got some overpayments. You have some underwhelming contracts and terms as well. For instance, this morning or this afternoon, whenever you want to call it, wherever you're at, Nikolaj Ehlers finally was signed to, I think it was 6 times 8.5, which before the start of free agency, that was 9 or more million. And, it kind of seemed like some agents kind of waited around, looked at the market, decided maybe their client and themselves may have thought a little bit more highly of their game than other people. And it's kind of what I alluded to a few episodes ago of that. The salary cap is rising, but the GMs in the hockey oligarch of old is still very much in its way. So doling out these massive contracts, I don't think is going to happen. Now, I think next year's free agency and trades, and as at this year's trade deadline and things like that, I think that we're going to start to see a little bit more movement. If it's secure that it seems that the salary cap will trend up and up and up over the next years after, like, I think the next 3 years it's projected to be like 1 in 15. But if that's going to continue and we have the evidence that proves that, then I think you're going to start to see a little bit of a loosening of the wallet with these GMs and these clubs, and organizations will be able to push the envelope as far as what they're willing to pay these players. And this year's free agency class isn't as intriguing as next year's. Next year's, you have big superstars who are able to sign. They're able to sign now, but they're really able to sign next year. If Connor holds out, Connor McDavid, if Jack holds out, that's when you're going to see some fireworks and some teams really throwing the bag at these guys to try to get them to their club. So, but as far as this year goes, yeah, it was a little weird. Again, I don't want to. We're going to talk about some of the the VGK players that left. Waugh was signed to term and his cost control, so that's great. But like Nick Hague getting 5.5 is so good for him. That's unreal. Great. But I don't think anywhere else or any other situation he would have gotten that. I think it's a bit of an overpayment. I think it's probably $1.5 million overpayment. But when you're looking at certain these young players, especially players with a little bit of like success pedigree, being a Stanley Cup champion and learning under these guys, and I think another thing that sweetens the deal for Hague in particular is his size. He's a big guy. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5", 245. When you look at the trending of the NHL and size wise, you want a guy like that. It's like 6'4" might be a very average height in the next couple of years. So I think you give him money in hopes that his ceiling is 5.5. And I think that that's kind of what Nashville's getting at. I think that in his current state, 4 million is plenty. And even then it's a little iffy. But I think his ceiling, he can be. I mean, he's got to work on his skating. He's got some things to work on. But as far as being a everyday NHL defenseman, 5.5, when you consider the cap rising, will be last year's 4. And then next year will be last year's 3. So we're getting in that direction. And I think maybe Nashville might have been one of those people that were a little bit ahead of the curve. And I mean, as far as GMs go, Barry Trotz seems to be an absolute madman. So we'll see kind of where that goes. They went from being a really underdog story getting in the playoffs 2 years ago to looking on paper like maybe one of the biggest world-beating teams, and then being at like legit dead last in the league for a long time last year. So On paper, still a very good team. Now, that being said, on paper, a lot of these teams look different than they did last year, and that's why we play the games. That's why there's 82, soon to be 84 games that we play. And I want to talk about on paper how the VGK looks today, because I don't think they're done, but today versus last year. And we're going to do some generational VGK. I want to do an episode of like all time VGK players, like who's your best top line from everybody we've ever had, kind of deal, and kind of make my all star VGK roster. But maybe I'll wait till we play a few games in the season before I get into all that, because right now it's just all speculation. But let's go with last year's team, and then we'll go to this year's team and see what I think we shake out to. So last year, let's go top line. We had Barbashev, Eichel, and Stone. Off to the races, one of the best lines in hockey statistically, and then, we kind of finally middled out. I don't think, I think with the early exit from the year prior, an entire offseason and training regimen with Stone and Eichel finally, it worked very well. Every player complemented each other on that top line very well, and they scored in bunches. I mean, I think through the first 3 games, we had something like 12 or more goals, and these guys just scored and scored and scored. And, that was 5-on-5 in the beginning too. So I think right now, top line was awesome last year. And then to start the year, if I remember correctly, it was Howden, Hurdle, Dorofeev. I'm almost positive that's how that started. And no. It was Olofsson, Hurdle, Dorofeev. Yes. They were fine. I don't know if I hated or loved their game, to be honest. It took them a bit to get going. Hurdle started going before any of them through the power play, and I think that kind of really started to increase his 5-on-5 numbers too. Dorofeev, same thing. He started getting going on the power play. Victor Olofsson was that one on that right side during the power play in the beginning, and he got hurt fairly early in the season, which then, Dorofeev was able to come through and start really to emerge as that sniper on at least that second line of power play that we needed. Third line was Howden, Carlson, and man, who was on his right? This is bad. If you don't know who it is, it's bad. And I am a VGK stan, so I should know this answer, and currently right now I don't. So we're going to go to the fourth, and if I jogs my memory, we will throw him back in. We had the fourth line, we had Pearson, Waugh, and Kolesar. So again, that Pearson, Waugh, Kolesar line wasn't as effective to me as the Howden, Waugh, Kolesar line. Again, I've said it before. I think that was the best fourth line in hockey. Man, it is going to bother me. I do not know who on the right side of Carlson was. Anyway, it's probably not a good thing if it's that unremarkable. Let's be honest. D pairings in the beginning was Petro Hannafin, McNabb, and Theo, and then you had Whitecloud and Haig. Aiden Hill in goal, Samsonov is backup. Nothing to scoff at. Hill had a rough start. Samsonov was a lot better in the beginning. Then he started going a little bit rough. Aiden started leveling his game out, playing to at least his potential, and it worked. I would say Hannafin left a ton to be desired in the beginning of the year. Once Theo went down with the Four Nations, he got that top power play quarterback, and he was able to touch the puck more, and his game elevated crazy. But again, if you're needing touches on the puck, that doesn't say a whole lot for your overall game. I understand that gets them engaged and it gets them going, but I need Hannafin especially, now that Petro's going to be gone this year, I need him to take a step forward and rely on his actual skills and mind of hockey rather than having the puck on his stick. You are a defenseman. I know that every player is going to be a lot more engaged, but the minutes you are about to receive this year are very important. And what you're doing in your position is very important. So I need him to get engaged quick. Theo has had that issue in the past too, but it seems like his game is matured enough to know now he's gonna get there. He does a lot with that puck, walking the blue line and really opening up lanes, whether it be passing or shooting. And McNabb's game is McNabb's game, blocking shots and not doing too much, keeping the game simple. I love when he jumps up into the offense and does his little toe drag. His one move he has offensively, it is beautiful. It almost never works, but it's awesome to watch. And yeah, I think, and when you look at Zach Whitecloud and Haig, they played the games they always play. They're really good partners. They grew up in the minors together, and they were fine. I don't think I don't think when we lost Alec Martinez, I think we lost a little bit of that shot blocking, harder nosed defense mentality that we had. Not to say that Petro didn't block shots, not to say, I mean, Brayden McNabb blocked shots like crazy, but it seems like we lost a little bit of that leadership ethos, going in. And he's such a clutch player, even though he was the king of the own goal because pucks just bounce off of him and in. So I think even we did take a step back from when he left. I think last year's team was really fine on paper. I don't know if it was turning my head or any other heads, but for the longest time, I don't know if we gave up first place in the Pacific almost all year. And if we did, it was only brief. We didn't have a huge lull like we had in the past, especially in the later months, especially around that February, March, right before playoffs. It seems like every year prior, we just have this lull and the power play just stunk and it sucked the life out of the 5-on-5 play. This year, it didn't seem like we had done that. And honestly, the power play kept us in a lot of games. And I'd like to get back to the really good 5-on-5 play. I think that's when we're rolling four lines, that's when VGK is the most dangerous. We kind of pulled the page out of Edmonton past book, and we were a little bit of power play merchants, and that is what kept us in the games. And not necessarily a special teams, but pulling the goalie, going 6-on-5. That got us a lot of late time goals. I was at the game against the Blues where we got the 2 goals in 90 seconds, and we ended up losing in overtime. But these are not 5-on-5 typical hockey goals. So I want to make sure that we get that kind of stuff back. Now, that was last year's start. This year on paper, we have a top line. And maybe we can go and talk about where we think depth-wise we're going to be. I have a few different thoughts on the second and third line, but I think a lot of people do. And I'm not Bruce Cassidy. I'm just a big fan who has my own crazy ideas. So top line, as it stands, Barbashev, Eichel, Marner. I think that's a better top line right out of the gate. No knock on Mark Stone. But Mitch Marner sees the ice very well. He skates way better. He has higher skill ceiling. And I think the way him and Jack are very similar in the way he commands you to be on him. He's going to command multiple defenders. And if you don't, you leave him open, he's going to score. Same thing though, like if you're commanding more than one defender, then you're leaving Jack open. And if you're trying to put, another little zone person on Jack and maybe spying over there, you're leaving Barbashev open. So I think on the top line, hypothetically, as it stands now, I think check mark this year, 25-26. Second line. This is where it's going to start to get hairy. Now, I really loved the addition of Brandon Saad. He was he was the guy, and he reminds me gameplay speed wise. Obviously, he's on the wing, but that north south speed, he reminds me a lot of Chandler Stevenson. So, I've been talking about Mark Stone being on the third line on the side of William Karlsson and then the opposite side of Riley Smith. And I still stand by, I really like that line. That's a shutdown checking line that can really make you pay offensively. And I think it's a mismatch for every other third line in the league except for the Florida Panthers. And I think it might be 50-50. But I think it's a mismatch everywhere else. It might just be a draw over there in South Florida. But I started thinking about it today on the drive home, and okay, Mark Stone's played his best hockey with obviously Jack Eichel. But after that, as far as in a VGK uniform historically, with Chandler Stevenson, speed, gets to a puck fast, can dish it back. It's no surprise that Mark Stone is not very fast. So he's kind of going to be that trailer, opens up, bang, and he can rip the puck. So let's give him that at least. So it would be very interesting to see a second line of Saad, Hurdle, Mark Stone. Mark Stone and Hurdle play very well together on the power play, especially when we can get down and around in that bumper area. Those guys play very well. Hurdle has a nose for the front of the net, and if he's going to command any of that attention as well, Mark Stone does like to take from behind the net and make that power move forward. So I think that there's and again, Brandon Saad likes to play a little bit off net in that slot area, wait for a puck to squirt out and make you pay there too. And with the speed of Brandon Saad, the IQ and defensive prowess of Mark Stone, I think you can shelter Hurdle a little bit and not give up too much defensively. That would be a very good second line. I still think, I don't know why, but I still think I really like that third line. And we could do a couple of things here soon. We'll line blender it up. That leaves the third line with Riley Smith, William Karlsson, Pavel Dorofeyev. You shelter Dorofeyev's defense. You let him learn from two people, one winger, one center, with good defensive prowess. That's going to be one of our PK units is Karlsson Smith. It's worked very well in the past. I mean, matter of fact, it got a nickname, and it's probably a nickname on many teams, but it was the power kill forever. So you have Karlsson, Smith, who almost like the Sedin brothers, they just know where they're at all times. And then you have this sniper. Now, Karlsson Smith has worked for a long time, and when they had another sniper on their side, that was Jonathan Marchessault, and for a long time, that was our top line. It works. Historically, a player like Pavel Dorofeyev on the other side of Karlsson works very well. And I've said this before, and he does. Bruce doesn't necessarily like three-line combos. He likes to pick two. So you're going to have the duo of Marner Eichel. Then you're going to have Stone and Hurdle. Then you're going to have Riley and Carly. Then you're going to have Kolasar Sissons or Howden and Sissons, depending on who he likes more. Now, Kolasar plays some PK minutes. Howden plays some PK minutes. I'd probably trust Howden a little more. So you're probably going to build a line around Howden on the wing and Sissons as your centerman. And that's that fourth line that rounds out. Now, I think offensively we take a step back because of Nick Waugh. But if you look at just metrics throughout their career, Colton Sissons is a good fourth-line centerman. He was playing wing last year. Everything about Nashville was an absolute disaster. On paper, again, elite hockey club. On the ice, shit. On the ice, unplayable. Relegate from the league. Gone. Terrible. Ugly jerseys. That yellow is horrendous. It's bad. I'm sorry. It's so bad. And I understand people hate the gold jerseys, but woof. That yellow it's a giant skating banana, and they were terrible. So, boom. But yeah, I think you get Howden back down. Now, Howden might not score 20 goals on the fourth line, but you don't need him to do that. He has the ability, but you don't need him to do that. And him and Kolasar trained all offseason together. Both of their games took a step forward. And if they can go ahead and do that again and emulate that again, I don't know if they're both taking steps forwards in the goal scoring department, but their overall game, I like the way Kolasar played last year. I know in the past he's been kind of a liability out there, and his role was like he got into fights, he would get beat up, that was that. But like the way he would chip it up and just get forward and get on that forecheck, it was very noticeably different and better than years in the past. And I think he's matured into a player that he's an everyday fourth line NHL defenseman. Now, fourth line NHL defensemen on the wing are a dime a dozen, but that doesn't mean he isn't getting better in his game daily. So as far as the forward group goes, I because of the addition of Marner, and I'm going to say it like this: when we got Jack Eichel, everyone centerman wise was able to move down. The strength for those first couple of years with Jack, and we're still in those first couple of years, but we're used to it now. Our down the middle game was rock solid. Kelly McCrimmon is a very smart GM. He trusts Bruce Cassidy, who is an insanely smart coach. I don't know why he doesn't get as much votes for the Jack Adams, but to me, he's up there. It's Paul Maurice, it's John Cooper. I think you have to start thinking about Bruce Cassidy as that 3rd or 4th best coach in the league. And I just don't I think that's true. And I actually don't think that there's going to be many people who argue that. And that's just facts. But Cassidy likes the player too. Cassidy is familiar with Jeremy Lauzon, and we'll get to the blue line in a minute, but Cassidy liked the player. So this is where I think maybe, obviously, the losing Petro really hurts Vegas. Your top line, most likely, is either going to be, now they played a lot of minutes together when Petro was out, and they played a lot of minutes together when the blue line needed to be shaken up, but you got either Hanifin, let's go with the top pairing, is going to be Theo and McNabb. They have upgraded to the top. And then you have Hanifin, either Zach Whitecloud or Hanifin Korzak. I don't know if you want to put Korzak Lauzon together. Yes, Korzak's played a lot for the VGK over his couple of years in the NHL. And by a lot, I mean last year it was his most games played at 40. He got 10 points. He was plus 15. Played fine. He didn't have any goals, but he had 10 assists, and he was fine. Played about 15-ish, 15 and a half minutes a night. I think, if you want him to grow his game, he did get the blessing from Petro that he's ready to play real regular NHL minutes. But I don't know if you want to put basically a now 82 game regular and somebody who's new to a club together. Now, training camps and chemistry and all that's going to shake out shortly, and that's Bruce Cassidy's call, but I think you might have to go Hanifin Korzak, and then you go with Lauzon and Zach Whitecloud. Zach Whitecloud's been that bottom pair defenseman throughout his entire career with the Vegas, and I think he plays that role very well. His cap hit would say he's a bottom pairing defenseman. And then you have your 7th as either, God, we picked up so many defensemen in free agency that I feel, that's why I feel like there's another move coming. And I know Kelly said he trusts this blue line, but I kind of don't. And I don't think it's controversial to say that Vegas is taking a step back defensively on paper. Got to play the games, so we'll figure that out. And then in goal, Hill and Schmid. Okay, what are we getting from Samsonov to Schmid? We'll go there first, and we'll talk about Hill. I talked about Hill a little bit last episode. So, Kier Schmid has won a playoff series Ilya Samsonov is not. 1 point Schmid. Um, Ilya Samsonov has had very, very high highs as far as gameplay goes in the regular season, and then unplayably low lows. When he was with Toronto, he was actually given back to the AHL for a conditioning stint. I do think he was hurt, or they might have just buried him for a bit. There was a point in time where he was an unplayable goaltender, and he never reached that bad in Vegas. But I do think that the Vegas defensive structure from all skaters, defense and forwards, do make it a lot easier on the goaltenders. This is why you're able to have middle of the road goaltenders and still have success, at least in the regular season. This is why we don't have the throw the bag at Igor Shesterkin goaltender. That's why, because our defensive structure plays to being above average in goal, not elite, and that's okay. Um, I think if you're talking about ceiling, we lose a lot with Samsonov. I think if you're talking about what we need as a team, you're not losing too much in Samsonov, and you're not losing, you're gaining in saving money in the salary cap. I think Schmid's going to be fine. I think that now going to Hill, I think he takes another step. He's one of those guys who is, again, you might call him boring, but I think he knows his game and he knows his body and he knows himself so well and he's got a really good relationship with Sean Burke. And I think that is one of those things analytically you're not able to put a statistic behind. And I think that when you trust the person who's helping you and you're able to be a coachable human and you're able to, like, that's never going to show up on a stat sheet. But I think his game takes a big step forward. I don't think Aiden has any higher of a ceiling. I don't think we're going to see these crazy steal games. Every now and then he's going to steal a game. He's going to post a shutout. He's going to do that. That's all goaltenders in the NHL do. I mean, shit, James Reimer shut us out this year. That should never happen ever. And I think his last shutout prior to that was like 5 seasons prior. It's disgusting. I still want to vomit from that game. Ew. But Aiden Hill, we've seen his ceiling, and his ceiling was good enough to support a team to win a cup. That's what we need. I think his floor rises. I don't think his ceiling rises. I think Aiden Hill's floor gets better this year, so he doesn't have complete stinkers. Vegas will get ran out of the building this year. It's gonna happen. It happens to every team inexplicably. It could happen in the beginning of a road trip. It could happen at the end of a homestand. It could happen night one. It could happen on our home opener. We could get pumped 8-0, and then all this looks like shit. But cooler minds will prevail, and I don't think that it'll be due to Aiden's gameplay. If he stays healthy, he's going to take another step forward, and I think you're looking at Aiden Hill being that like 9-1-5-ish goalie this year. 9-10, 9-1-2, 9-1-5, somewhere right around in there. That's a very good goaltender. It's not your 9-2-3s. It's not your world beaters, but he's going to win enough games and keep us in enough games, and he's going to be able to be supported by a goaltender who can keep us in games. He's a goaltender we will win with, not because of. And on the nights we don't have it, he will keep us in it as long as he can, and maybe 1 or 2 to 5 tops games, I think he's going to be the goalie we win because of. But right now, and his whole game is modeled after the goalie we can win with. And I think that's very important when we're starting to talk about our goaltending. Now, team versus team, this is my optimistic view on things. You always want to take a step forward, but I do think realistically, because of how people gelled and the lines didn't, Olofsson was fine, but he wasn't this insane role player. Nick Waugh was fine. He's not this insane role player. Alexander Holtz still might be a Vegas Golden Knight or a Henderson Silver Knight or the first man in the press box, but he wasn't a role playing difference maker. Petra was. That's a huge loss. Samsonov wasn't. You know, Nick Hague wasn't. Brandon Saad wasn't, but he also wasn't a bad. He obviously we brought him back. Riley Smith we brought back because immediately he elevated at least the excitement level, at least from the eye test, elevated William Karlsson's game. I think on paper we're better. And a similarity to me is once we brought Jack Eichel in, the trickle down effect. These guys who were forced to play top roles were able to settle into their actual role. And I don't think we have anybody this year that's going to play a role that they're not ready for. You know, if Dorofeev's on the second line, he was there all year last year. He's ready for that line. If he's on the third line, he's ready for that line. I think Mark Stone is ready to become a second line guy. Even if he's on the third line or the 2B line, he's ready to have his minutes just a little bit taken. Save his health. Let him perform in the playoffs. Let that maniac go when it matters. I'm giving the advantage to this year's Golden Knights. That might, agree or disagree. I love it. I love the friendly back and forth banter. Even when it's not so friendly, the podcast TikTok is probably the most contentious it gets, but at the end of the day, most of us say, hey, thanks for the chat. It's been fun, especially interacting with you guys, and that's where I'm getting my most engagement. If you see this as a clip on TikTok, follow me on Twitter, go to the YouTube, subscribe. That's it for tonight, guys. I think I broke us down a little bit as best I could, and I still can't think of who was on the side of William Karlsson. It bothers me very much. I'm missing an entire human, but that's how expendable you were. And if I remember, I'll add it in the description. But listen, thank you for your time. Thank you for your ears. I appreciate you guys always. I also, one day prior, so this is January, good God. This is July 3rd. I was able to reach my goal of 100 subscribers on YouTube because of all of you. Thank you so much. 102 and rising. Let's get this up. The next goals, let's go with the next goal be 125. Let's go small potatoes first. But if you like this, please physically like this video. If you liked it so much you think somebody else, a Vegas fan and not a Vegas hater, anybody would like to hear me, share it with them, please. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It really helps all the analytics. And one day, if someone would throw a few nickels at this guy to talk to you in front of the garage or again at the studio, we had a little hiccup with some equipment there. So went back to here. The thing I know gets podcasts out. We're going back there. Don't worry. But thank you very much. I appreciate you. Please subscribe if you have not done so. And yeah, as always, besos, mi amigos. Go Knights.